I never imagined I would be the kind of woman who kept secrets from her own family. After all, wasn't honesty the foundation of a marriage? A bond that was supposed to transcend time, circumstances, and even the silent spaces between two people? But there I was, sitting in the dim quiet of my kitchen, my fingers frozen mid-motion over a mug of coffee I hadn't touched in minutes. My husband's side of the bed felt colder than I could bear, and there I was again, caught in the web of my own loneliness, wondering how I had come to be this woman, this ghost. I am Natalie, 43, married to Jason, a man whose eyes no longer saw me, a man who had stopped seeing me long before I even realized I had stopped craving to be seen. I was also a stepmother to Alex, my husband's son from his first marriage. Alex had always been a quiet presence in the house, a young man of 20, doing his best to stay out of the way, to respect the delicate dynamics of a family that was never his own. But until that evening, I thought I knew him. I thought I understood him. It all began on a Tuesday. The kind of sticky summer evening when the air feels heavy, like it's holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. My husband, Jason, was away on another business trip, an all too familiar excuse for his absence, for his disregard. It was the same routine every week. Another trip, another night alone, another evening spent in a house that might as well have been empty. I'd convinced myself I could handle the loneliness. A good wife doesn't complain, right? A good wife doesn't expect anything more than what's given to her. She buries her desires, her needs, so deep within her that even she forgets where she put them. But some nights, when the silence felt unbearable and my thoughts spun like a broken record, I wondered how long I could keep pretending. How long could I keep pretending that I didn't long for something more? Something real. Something that would make me feel alive again. That evening, I found myself folding laundry in the guest room, humming an old love song that I barely recognized. The tune soft in the space around me, blending with the warmth of the house. The small, mundane act of folding clothes had become one of the few things that grounded me. It was supposed to bring a sense of order, of normalcy. But my mind kept drifting, pulling me deeper into the emptiness that had started to define my life. I longed for a touch, a word, anything that could fill the hollow spaces inside me. It was then that I heard the faintest sound, a low gasp, almost imperceptible but unmistakable. It was like the sound of someone stifling a sob, or perhaps a cry. I froze. The house was still, too still. I glanced toward the living room, expecting to see the glow of the television, but it was dark. My eyes flickered toward Alex's bedroom. He was supposed to be at tennis practice, his usual routine. But then, why did I hear that sound? I should have ignored it. I should have stayed in the guest room, distracted myself with the mundane task of folding clothes until Jason returned. I should have closed my ears to whatever it was that had drawn me toward that hallway. But something inside me, something reckless and starved for connection, pushed me forward. Something in me that hadn't been touched in years, the part of me that craved to feel alive again. I walked down the hallway, my feet heavy against the wooden floorboards, each step echoing louder than the last, but I couldn't turn back. Not yet. I wasn't ready to face the silence of the house again. And as I reached Alex's door, I stood there for a moment, hesitating. My heart hammered in my chest, warning me to stop. But I couldn't. I couldn't walk away from whatever I was about to witness. Whatever I needed to see. I pushed open the door just a crack, just enough to peek inside. My breath caught in my throat as I saw him, Alex. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, his back to me, his head down. His hands were trembling, his shoulders hunched as though he was trying to hold himself together, but something in the air felt broken. He was alone, but it was clear he wasn't. The sound I had heard earlier came from him. A soft, desperate sound like he was trying to keep something inside, something that was threatening to spill over. For a moment, I told myself to leave, to walk away. I should have. I should have closed the door quietly, backed out of the room, and convinced myself that it wasn't my business. That this was a private moment, something that had nothing to do with me. But I didn't. I stayed. I watched. It wasn't just the physical sight of him that stopped me, that rooted me in place. It was the rawness, the vulnerability. There was something so painful about the way he looked, like a young man who had been broken, but not by the world. He had been broken by something far closer, something unspoken. And, in that moment, I understood something I hadn't before. The truth is, standing there in the half-light of his doorway, I didn't feel like a mother. I didn't feel like a wife. I didn't feel like a woman caught in the silence of a broken home. What I felt was hunger, a deep, aching hunger for something real, for something that would pull me out of this numbness that had overtaken my life. I wish I could tell you that I turned away, that I closed my eyes and walked out of the room, telling myself this was a moment I had no right to witness. But I didn't. Instead, I watched as Alex let the weight of whatever had been building inside him slip from his shoulders. I don't know how long I stood there. Hours? All I know is that something inside me, something I thought I had buried long ago, had come alive again. And in that instant, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. That night, when Alex caught me watching him, something in the air changed. The fragile walls I had carefully built around my life, around my secrets, began to crack. I could feel it in the way his eyes locked onto mine, that brief but undeniable connection. It wasn't just the way he looked at me. It was the way he knew something about me, something I had buried so deep I had almost forgotten it existed. And yet, there it was, staring at me through the raw honesty in his gaze. Before I go any further, you need to understand one thing. This wasn't just about betraying Jason. No, it was far more than that. It was about betraying the version of myself I had become, the woman I had allowed to grow tired, distant, too proper to feel anything real again. I had convinced myself I was too old, too broken, too damaged to feel alive. But life, it seems, has a funny way of reminding you that it doesn't care for your self-imposed limits. So, tell me, what would you have done? Would you have turned away, as I thought I should have? Or would you have stepped closer, as I did, despite the warning bells ringing in my mind? Stay with me, because I promise, this is only the beginning. Maybe, just maybe, if Jason had looked at me the way Alex did, this entire mess could have been avoided. Maybe if he had noticed the small things, the details I needed him to see, my unease when I was alone in our bed at night, the way I shivered, not from the cold, but from the isolation I felt in the silence between us. Maybe if he hadn't turned our bedroom into a place where I spent night after night alone in my silk nightgown, the sheets cold and empty beside me, I wouldn't have started to crave the warmth of someone else's presence. But life, as I said, doesn't care about maybe. It only cares about what is. And what was a marriage fraying at the edges, with no one willing to sew it back together. That night, after I caught Alex watching me, I couldn't stop thinking about him. The next evening, I found him standing by the fridge, shirtless, drinking orange juice straight from the carton. He didn't see me at first, but I saw him, and for a brief, heart-stopping moment, everything inside me stilled. I should have scolded him. I should have told him to put a shirt on, to act with more respect. I should have been the proper woman. I used to be the one who could uphold the rules, the boundaries, the expectations. But my voice betrayed me, caught in my throat, and the words never came. Instead, I just stood there, watching as he took another swig of orange juice, his eyes meeting mine over the rim of the carton. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The kitchen lights were too bright, too honest, cutting through the space between us like a truth neither of us wanted to admit. And still, neither of us looked away. We were two people caught in the gravity of something neither of us had planned. He didn't say a word. I didn't either. We just stood there, aware of the shift in the air, aware that something had changed between us, something that wasn't easy to undo. But there were no words, no acknowledgement of the electricity that sizzled in the room. Instead, we drifted around each other, like two guilty planets in the same orbit, unable to break free from the pull. After that night, Alex lingered longer in doorways. His presence became harder to ignore, more magnetic. I found myself making excuses to cross his path, casual, trivial excuses, like needing help with the internet or pretending to be confused by the TV remote. I knew it was dangerous, that it was too easy to get lost in the moment, but I couldn't stop. It was like a craving, something I hadn't tasted in years, a hunger for attention, for feeling seen. One afternoon, I found his tennis jersey in the laundry basket. My fingers trembled as I picked it up, and without thinking, I pressed it to my face. The faint trace of cologne and sweat invaded my senses, and for a second, it felt like I was breathing life back into a body that had been starved of it for too long. God help me, I inhaled deeply. And then I heard the sound of Jason's car pulling into the driveway. The moment shattered. I dropped the jersey, heart hammering in my chest, a rush of guilt flooding through me. I didn't even know what I felt guilty about anymore. Was it the jersey? The way my heart had quickened in Alex's presence? Or was it the hollow way Jason had been slipping further and further away? Jason walked in, as distant as always, his gaze unfocused, like he wasn't really there with me. His lips brushed my cheek in a perfunctory peck, and I didn't even flinch. I had become numb to his distance. He didn't notice the flush on my skin, the restlessness in my hands, the way my thoughts were still miles away from him. He didn't even ask why dinner was late. He didn't see me anymore. But Alex saw me. Every crack I had tried to cover up, every scar I had hidden behind my smile, he saw it all.
And he didn't look away.
He started asking me if I was okay. Simple questions, casual. Like he didn't know the effect they had on me. But I couldn't help myself. His voice, the way his eyes softened when they lingered on me for just a beat too long, it was as if he was reaching into me, pulling something to the surface that I didn't even know was there. The way he looked at my lips when he thought I wasn't paying attention made me wonder if he could feel the same pull I did, if he, too, could sense the crack in the air between us. I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't hide from what was happening, even if I wanted to, because in those moments, when his eyes met mine and there was no space between us, I knew something had already shifted. And once a thing shifts, it's never quite the same again. It was a quiet evening, the kind where the house seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something to happen or for everything to stay still. I stood at the sink, the clink of dishes breaking the silence. Soap bubbles rose around my hands, thick with the scent of lavender, masking the tension hanging in the air. As I scrubbed the plate, I felt him before I saw him. His presence was a palpable force, a shift in the very air, like the heat of a summer day just before the storm. I didn't have to look over my shoulder to know he was there. His proximity was enough to set my skin tingling, an electricity that sparked between us despite the absence of touch. My breath caught in my throat, and I closed my eyes for just a moment, as if to steady myself against the rush of emotion that rose unbidden. The robe I wore felt thin, almost transparent in the face of the heat radiating from him. I could sense the warmth of his body behind me, though he didn't dare to move closer. He didn't have to. The space between us was filled with 1,000 unspoken words, thoughts left to simmer in the quiet. There were times when I wondered if he knew, if he sensed the pull that Alex and I shared, though no words were ever spoken, though the nature of it was never acknowledged. There were only moments like this, fleeting but heavy with significance, when he finally turned away, retreating to whatever corner of the house he called his own. I whispered a soft thank you to the empty room. It wasn't for him, but for myself, for the strength I hadn't known I still had. I knew if he had stayed, if he had stepped forward even just an inch, I wouldn't have been able to stop myself. Not then, not anymore. In the quiet aftermath, I leaned against the counter, feeling the weight of the moment press against me. I could almost hear the edges of a fragile promise shattering, the delicate balance I had maintained, wavering dangerously. There was only so long two people could walk the edge of something so wrong, and yet so intensely wanted, before they fell. And in a house like this, one built on secrets and hollow vows, falling didn't feel like failure. No, it felt like flying. But it was a flight that would take us somewhere dangerous, somewhere unknown. And that scared me more than I cared to admit. I had once believed betrayal was something loud, something chaotic, something that made a scene. I used to picture arguments that echoed through empty halls, doors slamming in fits of rage, the sound of a suitcase being thrown together in the middle of the night as someone left for good. But I had learned over time that betrayal didn't always announce itself so loudly. Sometimes, it crept in so quietly, so stealthily, that you didn't realize it was there until it was inside you. Its presence woven into the fabric of your every thought, every movement. It slithered through your ribs like a lover's hand, warm and secretive, pressing against you in ways you couldn't explain. Jason and I hadn't touched in so long, I had forgotten what it felt like to be close to him. Even when he was home, his presence felt like that of a polite stranger. There was no laughter, no shared glances. There was just the clink of silverware on plates, the hollow sound of a dinner table that once held conversations now reduced to a quiet ritual. His gaze often slid past me, unfocused, as if he were seeing me from a great distance. And when he looked at me, really looked at me, it was almost as if he were studying a faded photograph, a memory he wasn't quite sure was his. I remember one night, in the middle of that silence, he looked up from his phone, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if something had caught his attention. He studied me, his gaze intense and strangely distant. "You look different lately," he said, his voice flat, almost detached. The words seemed to hang between us, waiting for something to give, something to crack open. His eyes were searching me, probing beneath the surface, but I could hardly meet his gaze. Instead, I forced a smile, my heart thumping in my chest. Different good or different bad? Jason shrugged, glancing back at his phone, his attention already slipping away again. "Just different," he said, as if that explained everything. And just like that, he retreated, slipping away into the quiet of his office, leaving me to wonder if he really did know, or if he was too wrapped up in his own world to care. But the question lingered, gnawing at me. Could he sense the truth I carried, heavy and alive beneath my skin? The truth that pulsed stronger with every passing moment. Every time Alex brushed past me in the hallway, every time his presence made itself known, lingering in the corners of the house like a secret waiting to be uncovered. I tried to ignore it, tried to dismiss the way Alex's energy seemed to fill every empty space left behind by Jason's absence. But it wasn't something I could easily forget. Alex was there in the smallest moments, the way he would hover by the sink, as if lingering just a little too long, watching me wash dishes. The way he would murmur a soft goodnight in my ear, his breath warm against my skin. The way his fingers would brush mine when he handed me a glass, those brief, almost accidental touches that seemed to leave sparks in their wake. A lingering warmth that remained long after he was gone. I couldn't stop the way my body responded to him, no matter how much I tried to suppress it. Every touch, every glance, seemed to be a promise that both terrified and thrilled me. And it was getting harder to deny what was happening, harder to pretend that nothing had changed. In the quiet of our house, I could feel it, the tension thick and inescapable. I didn't know how much longer I could hold on, how much longer I could pretend that everything was okay. Because the truth was, I didn't know what would happen if I let go. It was another Saturday when Jason left for his conference, the kind of weekend trip that had become so familiar. It tasted bitter, like a lie I had learned to swallow without question. His departure had become routine, another in a long list of excuses wrapped in polished business trips and promises of returning soon. This time, though, something inside me had shifted. I stood by the window, watching his car roll out of the driveway, the engine's hum fading as he drove farther away. Behind me, the weight of Alex's gaze pressed into my skin like a whisper. I didn't turn. I couldn't. I knew that if I did, the delicate wall I'd built around myself would crumble, and I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. But even without looking, I could feel him, the quiet gravity of his presence. He spoke first, his voice low, almost like a confession, the words slipping out without hesitation. "You deserve better, you know." His words settled into the air between us, lingering like smoke, soft but suffocating. I didn't answer immediately. I couldn't. The truth in those words was like salt on a wound I hadn't let myself feel until now. "Don't say that," I whispered, though in my heart I needed him to say it. Needed him to be the one to pull me from this sinking feeling. I needed someone to remind me that I was worth more than this, more than the silence that had become my marriage. The warmth of his body moved closer to mine, an invisible force that made my heart race in ways I hadn't felt in years. He hasn't touched me, not yet, but his nearness felt like a touch, like a spark that had been building between us ever since he had walked into my life. It was a heat I couldn't escape, no matter how hard I tried to shut it out. Every breath I took became heavier. Every second stretched out as if time itself was waiting for me to make a choice. I stood still, my shoulders trembling slightly, my skin warm from the weight of his attention. Without even thinking, I turned slowly, my body betraying me, my eyes seeking him like a moth to a flame. When I finally met his gaze, my heart stopped for a beat. Alex was standing there, looking at me like I was something precious, something lost but still worth fighting for. He looked young in that moment, reckless in a way that reminded me of the parts of myself I had buried beneath years of routine, responsibility, and unspoken disappointments. But when he looked at me, I didn't feel like a wife. Something darker that I didn't know how to name. I wasn't sure if it was a plea for him to take me, or a warning that we were standing too close to a line that could never be uncrossed. His smile was soft, sad, almost like he understood. He took another step closer, but not too close. He never pushed me. He never forced me. But the way he looked at me, the way he made me feel like I was more than just a woman stuck in a broken life, his quiet affection was more dangerous than any touch. "I just want you to be happy," he said, his words lingering in the air, heavy with the weight of all the things we both knew we could never have, even if it's wrong. His words hit me like a wave, overwhelming and tender. They were an invitation and a warning all at once. And before I could gather myself to respond, before I could even think of what I should say, the front door rattled, and my heart skipped in my chest. I hadn't heard of a car. I hadn't seen anyone pull into the driveway. But there he was, Jason, his voice cutting through the quiet house with an unnatural cheerfulness, too loud, too forced. "Forgot my laptop. Can you believe it?" he called from the hallway, his words trying to fill the space with normalcy, like he could somehow drown out the tension that had settled in between us. In an instant, Alex stepped back, his presence vanishing like smoke as he disappeared into the shadows near the stairs. I quickly forced myself to breathe, to steady my heartbeat, to pretend like nothing had happened, like nothing was happening at all. Jason's footsteps echoed in the hall as he appeared in the doorway. His eyes flicked suspiciously over me, darting between my face and the empty hallway behind me. He was searching for something he couldn't name, but he knew it was there. He had always known. "Ty asked you. Everything okay?" he asked, his voice sharp with an edge that he couldn't hide. His smile was all teeth, too wide, too tight. It didn't reach his eyes. "Everything's fine," I lied, my voice betraying me with its tremor. I didn't dare look at Alex, didn't dare let my eyes linger on my husband, for fear he might see what I had already begun to understand, how much of me had slipped away, piece by piece, over the years. How much of me no longer belonged to him. That night, as I lay next to Jason's sleeping body, I stared at the ceiling in the dark, unable to sleep, unable to shake the feeling that something had irrevocably changed. The quiet house seemed to hold its breath, every creak of the floorboards, every faint noise down the hall, louder than usual. I heard the click of Alex's door shutting softly. He had gone to bed. But was he awake, too? Was he lying there, thinking about the same thing? Wondering, like me, what it would feel like if I slipped into his bed instead? I didn't move. Not that night. But the thought stayed with me, swirling through my mind long after the moon had dipped behind the clouds and the world outside had fallen into a heavy silence. The thought of what could have been, of what might still be if I allowed myself to want it. Some betrayals crash through your life like thunder, loud, violent, undeniable. But ours hummed softly like a lullaby, sweet and steady, lulling me into a dream I wasn't sure I could wake from.
Too gentle to resist.
Too beautiful to stop.